What series had the worst ending? Game of Thrones. And who has a better story than Bran the Broken? Probably every other fictional character ever. I know it's been discussed to death, but Bran might have worked with the right setup. A setup that the showrunners had zero interest in developing. Dexter. I pretend it ended after S4. How I Met Your Mother. The alternative ending is so much better. Clearly none of you have watched True Blood. I invested so much of my time to witness the worst ending of any movie or television series. Holy shit. The book is also infamously bad, hitting one of the worst scores on Goodreads I've ever seen. My coworker was a big fan of the series, and when I asked her about the final book, all she gets is "this look greater than." My Name is Earl series ended with a cliffhanger too. Austin and Ally. It was so corny. Even my 11-year-old self could point out that a flash forward of Austin and Ally with kids felt like a Wattpad fanfiction written by a 10-year-old. I never liked that show. That feels true of a lot of Disney sitcoms for me, because it just feels so hollow. In contrast, I liked Boy Meets World and Girl Meets World because while there is comedy, there is also meaning and thought. That's because the last decent Disney show was Good Luck Charlie, and even that wasn't super amazing. So that's how it ended. Glad I stopped caring after the second half of the second season. The Office has a good finale, but lord did it fall off after someone left. And even the biggest thing for its finale was that someone coming back. Under the Dome, there was a ton of potential, which was realized right up until it wasn't. The book was the same way. Limitless possibilities for what the Dome could have been. Government experiment gone awry, supernatural punishment for a corrupt and violent town, etc. And it turns out to be mean alien kids playing with ants under a magnifying glass. Basically, I liked the book, but the ending just didn't scratch the itch like I've come to expect from King. King is horrid at endings. Asterisk underage sewer orgies intensify. Asterisk. Alf. It ended on a cliffhanger in which Alf was taken captive by the government and taken off some secret research facility. The final season then got cancelled. It's even worse, considering that the main reasoning behind the family not turning Alf into the authorities in the pilot episode is that he'd get vivisected into small bits. Fibonacci. Sure, it keeps building up bigger and bigger, but it's so predictable. Yeah, it was always the summation of the previous two episodes. Do we count Cursed Child as the end of the Harry Potter series? If we do, then Harry Potter all the way. I've read several HP fanfics better than Cursed Child. But that makes sense, cause Cursed Child is basically bad HP fanfic. It's about as canon as My Immortal. I don't care what JK has to say. No, we pretend that Cursed Child doesn't exist. How I Met Your Mother. I feel like it was a big FU to the fans. The whole season being dedicated to Barney and Robin's wedding only to have them divorce 3 years later. Throwing Tracy under the cancer illness bus. Come on. And I don't know if this counts, because I'm not sure if there will be another season or not. But Veronica Mars. Now that was a giant middle finger to the fans. I felt so bad for the mother, Tracy. Ted wasn't telling his kids the story of How I Met Your Mother. He was actually asking his kids, "Can I date your Aunt Robin?" Quote, I know that Ted always loved Robin, but the ending made it seem like Tracy was just a phase. Robin couldn't have kids, so he found Tracy to have his kids and then gave her a disease when she wanted to actually marry him and be financially connected. Now that she's out of the way, Ted and Robin can live with their kids in peace. Dude, I honestly thought HIMYM was going to be at the top of this list. That one show where the entire show took place in a snow globe that belonged to a dude with autism. Saint Elsewhere. Santa Clarita Diet. Cuz fucking cliffhanger. Fuck Netflix for deciding it was too expensive to keep it going and deciding to make cheaper, shittier shows. Wait, what? It's not coming back? Edit. Fuck. And they did as well. Used to love watching that with my wife. Gutted. Nope. Shortly after S3 premiered, they decided to cancel it, saying it was too expensive to keep going, and thanked the showrunners for sharing it with them. It was the only zombie-themed show I loved. Sad face. I'm so gutted. Timothy Oliphant was so funny. Dexter. House of Cards. Some shows have amazing endings in the middle of the show. I would recommend anyone watch the first 2 seasons. The end of season 2 is a perfect ending for a series. After season 2 it just got worse and worse. Many people don't realize Hawk is based on a book British miniseries. Season 1 and 2 are nearly direct copies from the original, admittedly expanding on plot lines, fleshing out characters. By season 3 the source material couldn't translate well culturally, and that is generally when everyone agrees it went south. Season 6 could have worked. Maybe. The whole Kevin Spacey issue is one thing, but then in the backlash they filled it with pointless moments. There are never really any consequences to Claire's increasingly crazy actions unless I am forgetting something. My advice: if you enjoy this type of thing, watch the British miniseries from the 90s if you can stream it, etc. I have occasionally seen it on Canadian Netflix too. It really doesn't get too deep into parliamentary procedure if that's a concern. It's 4 seasons. 3 or 4 1-hour-long episodes per season. Then if you ever go back to the Netflix version, you can see the threads they picked up. True Blood. Got so pissed they placed Suki with some random off-camera guy instead of Eric. Also never finished the book series for the same reason. Spoiled the ending for myself and found out she didn't end up with Eric there either. Got fans have entered the chat. As a fan myself, non-fans must find it hilarious how much we hate it, haha. I normally only rage so much on something before leveling out and prioritizing life, but no, it's still there on the top of the rage pedestal, haha. Star vs. the Forces of Evil. It was the first story-driven cartoon ending that made me angry. She basically committed magical genocide on a larger scale than the villain of the last season would have. The whole last season was a fucking mess. They spent half the episode sticking around, and the other half rushing the main plot to reach the end. And the shipping nonsense. Dear God, the shipping. Look, I was into the ship stuff in previous seasons, but it made a sharp left turn in the last season. Very cringy. Arrested Development. Last season and a half was unbearable. Felt like I was sifting through garbage. Whatever the ending is, it's not worth a season 4 to 5 garbage pile. The show used to be about an endearing, rich disaster family. By the end of the show it's not funny anymore. Yikes. It's truly a shame. I've watched seasons 1 to 3 almost 5 times through but never gave 4 to 5 a second chance. Death Note. They should have ended it when Elle died. Or made Elle the one to defeat Kira. Not some random orphans from the Gifted Kids program. Every time I rewatch it I stop when Elle dies. Edit. Thanks for my first silver fellow weeb. The whole dynamic between Kira and Elle was what made the show interesting for me. I watched to the end, but I enjoyed watching Elle and Kira more than N and Kira. Elle was also a random orphan from the same program. I do agree with you that the show became much less interesting after Elle departed, but it still was pretty coherent till the end. It wasn't like they killed Elle and then spun their wheels. It all seemed part of the plot. Yeah, I really hated N. The show got worse when he took over Elle. That being said, I think the final episode was really well done, even if I disliked the outcome. The Adventures of Merlin. I understand that the series got cancelled so they had to finish the plot in very little time. But killing practically every important character except for Merlin himself? Seriously? Won't hesitate to admit Arthur's death made me cry like a child. But I was also like 13 when I watched it the first time. Looking back, the ending was just disappointing. The whole series was it, and the ending really spoiled it. I'm still angry at it. I really hoped for having at least some episodes if not a whole season, where Merlin could show off Arthur his magic. But yeah, the problem of series being cancelled prematurely. Always a pain. Arthur finds out about his powers, hates it, then just dies. Then Merlin becomes a postman in the modern day. Such a crappy ending. That entire show was a tease. I wish we could have had at least one season where Merlin used his powers openly, rather than repeating the same old formula over and over. Also, Merlin just makes the stupidest decisions that entire last season based on the words of a shady old dragon who clearly doesn't actually understand how prophecies work. On the bright side, Morgana's arc was executed beautifully. Though I would have liked the "is this what you wanted Morgana scene to actually have occurred. Everyone said the obvious like got. But I really didn't enjoy the ending to Gotham. Batman just stood there above the building. Felt kinda thoughtless in a way. I think because the whole plot was never about Batman. Not entirely. It's about Gotham and how the city affects all of the people in it. I think that's why I didn't enjoy it. It only tied Bruce's story up but not really anyone else's. That 70s show, last couple of seasons are absolute garbage after Eric leaves. The ending itself is perfect. Literally no better way than to end it as soon as the 80s hit. The whole season leading up to it? Utter garbage. They tried to make Randy into some weird Kelso-Eric hybrid that just didn't work. Pretty Little Liars. Last season and a half or so are garbage, agreed. I can still enjoy seasons 1 to 5 on rewatch though. Came here to say this. What a fucking bullshit ending. And I read the books after I finished the series. And the show would have been so much better if they had just followed the books almost exactly. Spoiler alert, the books don't have a random British twin plot shoved in. Heroes. Heroes really only had a good start. Heroes is the best example of what a lot of shows have done to seem like they had bad endings. The showrunners are obsessed with setup, but don't plan for payoff. For Heroes, it was clear that the show was only interested in introducing characters, and never really building the mystery. I remember the showrunners originally just planned for a first season, and when it was a hit they mused about making the second season a prequel. Set a generation in the past, or just having completely different characters. Setup without payoff always tanks a brand. Asterisk X-Files. Asterisk Heroes. Asterisk Lost. Asterisk Game of Thrones. They're all shows that had huge followings and mysteries. But looking back, you know the payoff is poor, so there isn't really a reason to go back rewatch it. Dexter has a bad ending, but only because characters started making off choices and the stories degraded. If you skip the last 2 seasons, the show's still worth a watch as a story isn't reliant of some mystery that can only be revealed at the end. Truth, it kind of limped on after that, or in some seasons, dragged its crippled legs along the ground, gasping for breath. We just hoped it would someday go back to season 1 quality. I think the initial plan was for each season to focus on a different group of heroes. Would have been better off if they did that. There were a ton of cool powers in the comics as well that would have been awesome to see. Instead, we pretty much ended up with the same powers we always see, while characters with cool powers get killed off unceremoniously. DL are just like forgotten. Monica, victorious. It didn't even have an ending. Same with Zoe 101. Lost. It's gotta be Lost. They wrote themselves into a corner with the endless plot twists. And for most of the series you are just hoping for a payout that ties up all loose ends. Nope. Teen Titans. In my head, the penultimate episode, Titans Together, is the true finale, which would have left it off on a good note. I always assume Things Change was put at the end because it was going to lead into season 6 that never came. If I'm not mistaken, Things Change was supposed to lead into a 6th season, but then it never happened for some reason. I consider Trouble in Tokyo to be the true finale simply because it ends with Robin and Starfire finally hooking up. That's probably for the best. but they still did my man Beast Boy dirty and he deserved better. Also, on a side note, Teen Titans Go doesn't exist and I refuse to acknowledge anyone saying otherwise. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.